Progress. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I see some familiar names and I see some new names, so welcome. I don't think I need to tell any of you about what Effies actually are, but I think what we're going to do is I'll do a little bit of a background and then run you through some tips and feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll try and answer them at the end. I'm going to give you a few references as well for examples and things that you can go and look at. Um, but it's great to have you all here, and it's always exciting to kind of kick off the new season. So, and we are recording this and we will share it. And as I said, there's lots and lots of reference tools that I'm going to point you towards. So before I start, can I just get like a sort of a hands up? How many of you are here for the first time? For how many of you is this your first Effie that you would be writing? Okay. Quite a few, but quite a few are old hands, it would seem. Oh, okay, all right. Excellent. Okay, so what the Effies are, obviously the big thing about Effies is they talk about honoring ideas that work. So they look to honor campaigns that have delivered superior results in surpassing the objectives. But there's a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to explain to you how it works.
Effective marketing equals effective storytelling. We celebrate those stories and their storytellers. Ideas that work, the brave, the best partnerships, and the strongest cases that prove it. So bring us your best work and build a powerful case for it. Here are 7 ways to really stand out and maybe even win an Effie. 1. Give your story context. Context is king. 2. Tell an engaging story with connectivity and confidence. 3. Be concise, clear, compelling. Make it short and impactful. 4. Tell it with honesty, authenticity, and simplicity. 5. Write for your audience. Hint, your peers. 6. Show us the results. How did your work make a difference? And why did it matter? 7. Make sure you proofread a lot. So to review, tell us what you did, why you did it, how you did it, and what resulted from it. We are in the business of effective marketing, so tell it like you mean it.
Okay, so there's some key little pointers in there that I'm going to just go over again. I'm also going to share some words from our past judges and from inside the judging room. And as I say, this is being recorded, so you can listen to it later if you want to. I also want to encourage you to go to our podcast and listen to this interview with Ahmed Tilly. So Ahmed is one of our jury co-chairs, along with Rafiwa. And it was a really interesting discussion around being in the room, being a judge, what works, what really doesn't work, the kind of conversations that judges have in the rooms. And I found it incredibly insightful. So do yourself a favor and go and listen to that. But as it said in that little video, is write for your audience, and your audience are the judges in this case. So begin with the judging in mind. Think about who's going to be reading your case. So you're not writing it to, a senior executive in your company. You're actually writing it to people who are reading it, they're seeking to understand, and they want, they're reading it with a very optimistic view. But just think about who they might be. And just so that you know, what we do with judges is that we try and aim for a 50-50 balance between marketing and agency. Within marketing, obviously, we try and get a numerous different categories and numerous different roles within the marketing area. So you could have an head of insights, for example, or a head of media or whatever. So we try and aim for a big contingent of marketers. And then on the agency side, we try and make sure that we have a spread of strategy, creative, digital, social, media, PR, sponsorship, the whole gamut. So, and we have research and we have all sorts of other things. So you're speaking to people, a group of people when you are in the room, and I know there are some people on this call who have judged before, but when you're in the room, what we try and do is we try and give each judging pool. So there are two rounds of judging. And what we try and do is we have to make sure there's no conflict of interest. And we have to make sure that, yeah, so competitors aren't judging competitors' cases, for example. And we make sure that we've got a diversity of experience within the room. So it makes it quite interesting because people are coming at it from different angles when you're having the conversation. So your entry is judged by some of the brightest, most experienced business and marketing leaders. Scoring is done anonymously. Judges are matched with cases that don't provide a conflict of interest. What happens in the first round, so there are two rounds. In the first round, each judge reviews 6 to 10, possibly more, cases across a range of categories. You do that individually. You do it online on your own, and you submit your scores on the Effie portal. You don't talk to other people about the case. You do it entirely on your own. What happens then is that those scores are what's the word when they all sort of added together, and that creates a kind of a cutoff for what goes through. So I think it's above 75, above 72 goes forward into finalists. And that there is a calculation to define exactly what that number is. The finalists then go into a final round. Again, you judge those individually, but then you discuss them against each other. So you're comparing now in a category, let's say automobiles, there's 3 cases. You're actually sitting with your judges and deciding which one might merit a gold, which one might merit a silver or a bronze, or none at all. So in that second round, it's a defining of which cases actually deserve a trophy. I think in this past year, we had, just to give you some numbers, we had 112 entries, we had 44 finalists, and we awarded 26. So it's quite tight, it's quite tricky, but the ones that go through are really exceptional. So some of the pieces of advice is, number one, write for your judge, your audience, but also write for think about how you are going to be judged in different rounds. So obviously you can't change your case, but round one, you review independently across multiple categories, limited discussion, very clear logic, simple. If the flow is good, and you can clearly demonstrate your case, happy days. The second round, and it's called the final round, but there is one more, which is the grand. But it doesn't always have to happen. You don't necessarily have to have a grand, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. So the final round, you judged against other finalists in your category. Your case is compared. Ambition, difficulty, and credibility matter more than ever. So write for comparison, write for debate. So when I'm going to explain now, but when you're setting up the context, um, you need to clearly explain why this was actually quite difficult to achieve. So help your judges to understand at that point. It's important to position your case entry well, so to stand out amongst the other cases that the judges are going to be reading. Write clearly, write concisely, write compellingly, and anticipate the critical scrutiny. So I'm going to show you, just anticipate what they might question. And then, as I said, we try and make sure, well, we have to make sure that competitors don't judge competitive cases. So understand that the people you are writing to might have no understanding of your category. So if you've got category nuances, if you've got jargon in the alcohol industry or in the automotive or in financial services, and everybody knows what PRSQP means, assume that people don't. Okay, so assume that people don't understand your category at all, and you need to explain it to them. All right, so because you're not going. Sometimes you have people who have moved and used to work for a beer company and now work for financial services. So they can shed some light on the discussion around the category, but make sure that you do enough explaining of the category to help them understand. Then after those 2 rounds, only the golds go forward for into the grand. And then normally, on average, there might be 3 or 4 golds that go forward for the grand. We don't have to issue a grand. It's only if it's exceptionally good. So I just want to play you a short little video. We were asked to contribute last year to a global Inside the Judging Room series. And this was taken immediately after our grand judging last year. And the grand that won last year was City Lodge, TBWA, for a Save Our Stay campaign. And we just interviewed each of the grand judges independently. Nobody knew what everybody else was saying. And it's just quite interesting to listen to why they thought it was worth a grand.
We chose the winner for the reason that any case study makes it into the Effies. It was a clear, consistent, and compelling story of a monumental challenge that they had to overcome, a simple, clear, and articulate strategy and insight, some of the most phenomenal creative that I've seen in a very long time, and ultimately results that exceeded every single objective they set out for themselves. And that's what makes this a worthy Grand Effie recipient.
It was exceptional. The case was all the things that we needed in a gold and certainly in a Grand Effie, and it's probably the best representation of an effective and beautifully creative campaign out of South Africa.
The winner clearly stood out because of their articulation of the insight. It literally is a universal insight. You could take it to any country, and at the same time they found a way to localize that insight in the execution that they put together, and clearly delivered results.
Effie's celebrates great creativity that brings business results, and I think that this was a great case study for that. The work was charming, it was exciting, it was creatively innovative, but it also delivered on the business metrics. It was a very clear case.
I think the clarity of the strategic choices that they've made against a really, really tough challenge really set them apart.
This year's Grand Effie was something that was just outstanding in terms of creativity, business results, and strategy. And I think all 3 are super important.
It's been a long time since you felt such fresh, a South African type of work, but also the work any of us globally could actually identify with the insight. The insight is interesting. This was competing with many big propositions in that space, but they were actually able to break through.
They had an incredibly difficult challenge to overcome in an industry that has seen high competition from locally and abroad. They took a brilliant insight of how these companies are, I guess, not winning with consumers, and they really landed South Africans in an incredibly fun and creative way.
The Grand Effie winner this year really demonstrated what we want effective marketing to represent, which is being rooted in real insights that can resonate not only locally but globally.
What's interesting in this Grand Effie judging is just the robustness of the conversation. We had an incredible jury, and let me tell you, we debated these cases for hours, and I think the winner can be incredibly proud of winning this Grand Effie. So I think you can get a sense of the type of conversation, and you can see in that room the level of talent and experience. You've got the CMOs from very big companies like Unilever, Nedbank, KFC, all past Effie winners. Vaughan Crozer from SAB was also there. He was just on a screen. He wasn't well that day. But then you've also got heads of media, you've got heads of agencies, you've got creative directors. It's a very, very, very good jury. So that's interesting. As I said, answer the questions that judges will naturally ask. I mean, the reason we debated this so robustly was there were some questions that we had that were not necessarily, clearly answered. So judges are naturally skeptical. They're going to be going, yeah, but did they really achieve it? And I'll give you an example. There was a beautiful case from VW Night School. I thought it was like gold straight through. I thought it was unbelievable. But one of the things that they had claimed was a reduction in accidents. And there was a lot of skepticism around that. Like, can they really claim that this night school actually correlated with a reduction in accidents? So it's just like, make sure that what you are claiming, and it still did very well. I think I got a gold, but I mean, you need to be able to prove what you say, that your results. So before you submit, answer these questions. Was there price discounting? Did distribution? Was there any other reason for the results being what they were? Don't pretend that those questions don't exist. So address them, provide context, neutralize doubt, because that's what they're doing. They're wanting to give you the trophy. Obviously, there's nobody coming in from a negative point of view, but they need to be sense checked. They need to be sure that they're giving it to you and that the results are real. So in order to help you put your entry together, you need to go to this link, and it'll take you into our website, where there is a lot of interesting things here. There's the entry kit, which also gives a lot of tools and tips. There's the templates, and then there's the category definitions. And I'm going to show you at the end with also a link to go to different to go to case examples where you can read other cases and just get a sense. So 5 principles for success: understand the rules of each section and make each section count. Lay out your challenge, identify the incisive insight, showcase how the idea was brought to life, and then demonstrate how all of that delivered the results that solved the challenge. And very importantly, make sure they all hang together. So the way that it works is there are 4 pillars. Section 1 is around challenge, context, and objectives, and that counts for 23.3%. Section 2 is about insights and strategy and what your idea platform is. Then section 3 is how do you actually bring that to life? That's where you talk about your creative, your touch points, and your media. There is an investment calculator. And then section 4 is the results, and obviously that is worth slightly higher, that pillar. So let's listen to Makosha.
In terms of what it takes to win the Grand Effie, I think for me, the kind of word of the day was around breakthrough. So, breaking all the rules from a marketing, from an advertising perspective, but also delivering a breakthrough creative campaign, accompanied with breakthrough results. So, yeah, I think all around, the winner kind of ticked all of those boxes. And the winners can be really proud of what they've achieved.
So what's important there is it's important that you do well in each section. So very importantly with Effie's is this is not just a results award. We are interested in effectiveness. But if you have brilliant results and your creative was really average, you're not going to win big. You're not going to win above maybe a bronze. So it's very important that your insights are super strong, that your objective is really clear. So each pillar has a role to play. And, as Nao from Ogilvy always says, is like, try and get the highest mark in each section, and then obviously you'll do well. Then the next area is just to choose your categories well. And there are over 90, I think, subcategories and whatever. So they're industry categories. Then there are specific categories like David and Goliath, or like positive impact, or those kind of things. You can obviously enter in more than one category, but what's very important is not to simply use the same case over and over, because the nuance of each category is different. If you're entering a positive change or a David versus Goliath, it's not going to be the same as your entry into automotive, because that's a different story. You have to explain why this was a David versus Goliath kind of case. So you can use the bulk of the case, obviously, but just make sure you write the nuances. There is a QR code. You can go and find the categories, but it is also on that web link that I showed you. So some advice from some of our global partners: don't copy paste across categories. So effectiveness is judged within the context of each category definition. So for example, last year we had we had one case that was entered across different categories, and one of them was social impact, one of them was I forget the name of the category, but it's kind of like where you choose a specific day, like elections or like Women's Day or like whatever. And then there was another category. So this one case was in 3 different categories. And actually the debate was, well, is it more effective in social impact, or was it more effective on the day category, or was it more effective in, I don't even remember the category it was in, alcohol or I think it may have been delivery, I don't know. But the thing is, you have to so choose the category that you think you have the best opportunity to win. And then don't copy paste. Very, very important. Craft your case per category. And what they say here: media must center media strategy. Commerce must prove conversion. Positive change must demonstrate social impact. So let's just listen to Astrid here.
The biggest piece of advice I can give anyone who's developing a case study or entering an award is to build to purpose. Focus on exploring each category's unique criteria and edit your entry accordingly. I do believe as judges, far too often we see the same campaign entered into a multitude of categories, with the criteria of each category differing, but the entry itself remaining unchanged. So take that time to understand what each category's focus is and adjust your entry so that it speaks to those unique criteria. You may be pleasantly surprised at how much it can make your case study stand out amongst the rest.
Okay, so let's just dive into each of the sections quickly. Section 1 is the foundation, its challenge, context, and objectives. Very importantly, weight will be given to the degree of difficulty of the challenge. If you are a massive brand and you're aiming for a 1% growth, that is significant. If you're a small brand and you're aiming for 1% growth, that's not that hard. So weight will be given to the degree of difficulty. What's going on in the category? What's happening in the marketplace? What are consumers up to? What are your competitors up to? What are the global competitors? City Lodge had a situation where they were competing against global competitors like Airbnb and Booking.com, which made the weight of their challenge much harder than just being a local competing against local competitors. So that's important. To demonstrate the difficulty of the challenge into clear, measurable objectives. Make sure your objectives are actually clearly articulated in terms of what you wanted to achieve. Use the SMART objective format and provide the necessary context, again, remembering that the people reading this might not understand your industry at all. So if you are, in chocolates, people might not understand the vagaries of the chocolate category. Make sure that you explain that to them. So frame the situation and category, show what the competitive landscapes is, and your clear objectives and KPIs. So this bit here, not retrofitted to results, is important because what's quite funny is sometimes you'll read a case and it says in the results, you'll see that they achieved 72.65% growth. You'll then go back to the objectives, and the objective was to achieve 72.65% growth. No one writes that. Okay, so you may say we want to achieve 70% or 75%, but like don't retrofit back into the objectives. Like it's important that we actually see what you're aiming at and what you achieve. And then there are some suggestions here for each objective. You will be asked, there's a drop down, you will be asked to select what type of objective it was: awareness, consideration, purchase, loyalty, or advocacy. And then there are some examples there, and that's just for tagging purposes, so that when research is done, on all of the Effies globally, there's some consistency. So let's listen to Neo.
Setting the context is the most exciting and most important part of your Effie, I think. And I think in my learning from judging is the entries that actually set up the context very well and took it from context to objectives really did well. And what is important is that the objectives match the results. So that is very important. I think people always assume that judges are fair with all the categories, conventions, and limitations. If you do your entry, you want to make sure that you outline that very well upfront because you're not going to be in the room.
Okay, so Mokarosi says measurable goals are important to frame your results later.
Setting the context.
Right. Okay, so just as an example, Pineapple and Halo, they won the grand a year ago. 2 years ago, their challenge was, how does an insurance challenger brand drive fame and growth in a competitive category people don't necessarily trust nor like? So it's written in an interesting way. They're not writing in a very sort of formal marketing-ease way. That's just bang, that's what it is, and it's interesting. Okay. Just as a heads up, we are doing an Ipsos Trends webinar on the 24th of March. What Ipsos does each year for us is they have a look at all of the winners from the previous year and global best of the best, and they pull out certain trends and certain aspects that each of the winning cases had, or that you can tell that the winning case had. So bookmark it. There will be a handout, but it's normally, I've actually seen the report already. It's really interesting, worth getting a copy of that and worth attending that workshop webinar. Okay, section 2, insights and strategy. This asks you to explain the strategic thinking that enabled you to pivot from your challenge to results. The most important thing is to pull out the incisive insight and the strategic tactic deployed to solve the problem. And we want him to see how inventive the strategy was. We want to see the strategic process, insight, not facts. If you've got research, use it. It's very useful in this section to actually see some charts, to see some audience research, put in, well annotated results of research, because that'll help us understand. So why is the brand positioned to address this insight? How does the insight link to strategy? A clear definition of your audience demographics, cultures, personas, and then the core idea and the strategic build. So that piece around the clear definition of your audience, also important because, as I said, the people in the room might not be familiar with your category or with your audience. What drives them? What doesn't drive them? What motivates them? What are they looking for? So insights, we all know the issues with insights. Make sure it is insightful. Insights should feel new and different with attention and a sense of actionability. The idea should be crisply articulated and linked to the insight, and then find a real insight, not an audience of observation or category convention. I can tell you that I think that this is the one area where it really separates cases out, is the quality of the insight, because there's just an immediate spark to go, aha, right, got it, and that the link then into the idea. So Pineapple's one insight was, people don't like insurance at all. Reflecting this in how we speak about insurance would establish an emotional rapport. So people don't like insurance at all. Universal truth. Okay. And then in the idea there, they sort of said they wanted to use challenger brand theory to disrupt, and they wanted to use humor as an emotive hook. Section 3 is how you bring the strategy to life. So we need the key elements of the plan, creative work, the touch points, investment overview, and a creative reel. So demonstrate how you brought the idea to life in a compelling and fresh way. We want to see how you executed your strategy. If there were pricing issues or promotional tactics, we need to see that. It needs to have a direct line between objectives and how you actually played it out. Important in the media choices to say why you chose those mediums. Do the investment overview, and the judges are looking to see why you chose specific media channels. We need a creative reel here. We actually need 2 creative reels. We need one that's 3 to 4 minutes, and we need a 30-second cut down. What is very important is that the written case wins it, the reel confirms it. So they must work together. You can't just have a beautiful reel and then kind of a wishy-washy written case. The written case is very, very important, but obviously the reel can bring it to life in a way that the written words can't. There is some new info here for people who have done it before. Effie Global has now decided that reels can include results. So in the past, results were expressly forbidden. And there was a lot of, it was really, we wanted to see every single touch point. It's still important in the creative reel to show all the touch points, but you can now also put the results in. But very importantly, any results must be able to be shown publicly. So some of the cases we get obviously have very, very confidential information. And when you submit your case, you need to say whether we can show that what we can actually share publicly. And if it's in the reel, and we're going to be showing the reel when you win the Grand Effie, if those results are not shareable publicly, then don't put them in the reel. So that's pretty important. Judges recommend that 70% of the reel is spent showing examples of the creative work. So it's very important that you show each example of each type of touch point. So if you had a bus shelter and you did up the livery of a jumbo jet, and you had an outdoor hoarding, and you did a social media activation, we need to see all of them. And obviously we can see cut downs of them, but we need to have an example of how this thing played out across all of your touch points. There's a lot more information on the creative reel actually in the documents, so please go and read that. The other thing is, as I said, we do need you to tell us what we can share publicly if you do win. So all of this is on the entry form, but just to say it is important so that we're not scrambling around the last minute, asking you for a publicity photo, and when you must just submit it just in case. Okay, so let's listen to Carl here on creativity.
A lot of the work that I saw last year was really well put together in terms of strategy. I think for me, Effie's felt like a lot of the entries or entrants had set up good strategic arguments. I think my criticism last year was that at the end of the day, innovation should still be quite an important aspect of what we do. And when I say innovation, I mean distinction, showing up differently. You could call it creative depending on what you're putting on the table, but for me it's about how do you also bring the idea to life. So I think a winning entry or case study or case should have all the basic things, the context or the challenge, the insight, strategy, the idea especially, and then impact. I think for me, impact is massive, and we're seeing impact playing a more pivotal role in many of the awards now. Even if you consider Cannes, our impact or results are, in some categories, the reach categories make up 30% of the scoring. So, while I think, insight's important, strategy and idea and how you bring that idea to life, for me personally as a creative, is quite important. I think last year I saw a lot of work which was, well put together, good setup, good strategy, but then the idea let it down. So I'd see amazing cases, but then when I looked at the work, it was a banner or, something that got results, but the work wasn't specifically innovative or distinctive or creative. And I think for me, it just means that the work that we put together needs to still appeal. The idea still needs to be strong and still needs to play an important part. And again, yes, I'm saying that as a creative, but I think the idea should still play an important role at Effie's. I know the results are important, but I don't think we want to be in a space where we're just awarding work just because of results. I think the work has to be good. It has to raise the bar in some way or another.
So it's quite interesting because if you look at the way the pillars are split, you've got idea, you've got objectives, then you've got strategy and insight and idea, and then how you bring them to life. the second and third pillars actually are the creative solution in its entirety, moving from audience to execution. So Carl's absolutely 100% right, and I've said that already. So this was just one of the things that came out of one of the Ipsos trend reports, where creative that conforms to category conventions suffers from cognitive immunity, in that no one cares really. The winners take risks and challenge category conventions. So this was from the actual Effie Awards. Breaking category ad conventions creates bigger, greater brand attention, and these were the Effie winners. So I think that's interesting. Your investment side also is important, because a lot of the conversations in the room come down to scale. If the results were achieved off a very small budget, that's obviously very impressive. A large budget can be a negative in some instances, because you've thrown so much money at the problem, obviously, whatever. So, but it's very clear that you need to show the strategic use of your resources, show the media allocation logic, and show how you've shifted that over time. So going on to section 4, this is the results. This is where it all comes together. And very important, we've all said it a few times, there has to be a correlation between the beginning and the end. So did you achieve what you set out to do? How did you do it better than expected? Because that's what you're saying, like it was really impactful. Address other contributing factors. So, like what went well, what didn't go well. And there are some sections on the form where it asks for key metrics, and sometimes there's just like the block is blank, or there's not applicable. Just say client didn't share results, or whatever. If you just don't ignore it. On the marketers sharing results, there are NDAs that are signed. We do treat these cases with a lot of confidentiality, and if you are having an issue with getting the results from your clients, or if you as a marketer are concerned about sharing those results, there are ways of showing them where they're not absolute. You can put percentages in. And if you're worried about that and you need assistance in terms of how we handle those results, just let us know, because it is often a case where we find right towards the end of the closing of the deadline, people are still waiting for results to come from their client, or they're waiting for results internally, and so that can be a little bit of a stumbling block. What's happening on here? Consistency in the information is critical. Charts and graphs are effective. Tie the story together and make sure your case works seamlessly.
I think when you
this was the pineapple one. Increased annual policy sales by 232% with a monthly peak of 640% year on year. I mean, those are staggering results. They were off a smaller base, but they were still staggering results, and the whole thing all hang together. So what you're wanting to do in section 4 is narrate the effectiveness, the campaign results, resolving the objectives set up at the front. So start with the executive summary so that you can start telling the story. Cases are read as one of many. Ensure you have the most impactful, focused information. A data point is not an insight. Use the creative reel to complement the information. Make it compelling, be concise, write your case in a way that engages judges. I can't tell you how lovely it is to read a case that's written with a sense of humor, that's written in a way that actually I want to read it rather than I feel like I'm plowing through it. Provide context, be honest, authentic, and simple. Try and avoid marketing jargon. If you do use jargon, please explain it. Create a strong link between execution results and review and proofread constantly. So just some mistakes to avoid. Lack of context, we've spoken about this a lot. Help judges understand how challenging and ambitious the objectives were, and that's how impressive the results were. So don't underestimate the importance of benchmarks. It's one thing that comes up often, like what was happening in the market. We have no context of what car sales were. So yes, this looks like a good result, but what was happening in the whole auto industry category market. So benchmarks are important because we don't always know. So it's hard for judges to tell if a 0.3% is uplift is good or great, but we need to understand the context. Poorly defined objectives and KPIs, so not linking the objectives clearly to the business challenge and failing to provide compelling measures of effectiveness. So make sure that you've explained the challenge and that we understand the way that you were going to go and measure it. Too many squishy KPIs. Failing to communicate the core insight and strategic idea. So many cases are let down by citing facts and data as if they were insights. Why should your brand own a truth is very different than simply identifying a truth exists. Ensure that insights tied to human behavior, and the idea is the pivot, the sort of the alchemy of it, where it all sort of comes to life. Poor storytelling. Well-written entries stand out, and what's interesting when you look at the case summary, it outlines the four areas, and then there's a block for why is this a deserving case, and I've put examples for this at the end that you can read. If there's a beautiful flow there, and if it's clearly, goes from here to there to there to there, it's important. So try and get that one pager done, and then build out around that. Results not tying back to objectives is a big one. So if there's obvious hyperbole and loose connections, and if there's no clear flow from objectives to results, it's just going to create confusion. So avoid missing mandatory category information, withholding data. Source citing is really important. If you are referencing a trend of Gen Z, a media trend amongst Gen Z, make sure that source is referenced, because we need to go and check it out. And especially if it's industry or category sales, or we need to go and have a look at them, check them out. Inconsistent numbers. Entering the wrong category is disappointing. What we do sometimes do at the end of round one is, if we feel there's a very, very strong case, but it's been entered in a wrong category, we will come back to you and say, we will give you the opportunity to change that category. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it's just, it's such a strong case, and by round two, there's nothing we can do about that. So that's important. Breaching anonymity rules. I suppose confidentiality is important. And precision matters. So the eligibility is for sustained success is 3 years, and all other categories are in the past year. So 1st of February to 31st of January. There is some wriggle room around that. So if it started in January, it's okay. Just let us know. The timeline is here. The entries open on the 1st of April. We are busy recruiting for judges. We've got over 100 applications already. So I think we're going to have a really, really great jury this year. And if you're wanting to judge, please get your entries in. If you know people, if you've got clients, or if you've got senior people that you work with that you think would be a good judge, please get your applications in, because I think those applications close in May. And then the first round judging takes place in July, second round judging in August, grand judging is September, and then the awards gala is on the 22nd of October or thereabouts. Oops, I left out the admin slide. I'll get in trouble for that. Only EFTs accepted. If you haven't paid by the time we need to go, and there's a huge amount of compliance that gets done, we have to check each entry. We have to check that you've done everything right. Before, and it's called staging. Before we can release your case, you have to have paid. If you get stuck, please get in touch with our team. Our teams, Snare and Daneo and Ash, are very happy to answer questions. They will be in contact with you as well. They'll watch your progress, and if you get stuck, they will probably contact you. But we're there to help. There's a lot of things. You can watch our dialogue highlights. So we had a dialogue last year with the winners. We're having a dialogue this year. In fact, I think it's next week. So come and join us if you want. And we've got the TBWA and City Lodge team on the stage. We've got Sean Dix from Ipsos on the stage. And these are very insightful conversations because it's really about how they got to where they got to and what actually won them the grant. So that's happening. Our magazine is awesome. It's an interactive flip magazine, and what it does is it gives you all of the creative reels. So all of the finalists, all of their creative reels are there. So go and have a look at those reels. Just remember these are the pre-results. You weren't allowed to put results in, but there's some brilliant reels. So go and have a look at those. Also, you can go to this link, which is a global link, and you can actually read sample cases there. So that's useful. And when you are filling your case in, you have the option to apply for an insights guide. What the insights guide is every judge who judges writes why they scored you the way that they did. And then you get that in a report. So it's a fantastic learning document because you've got some of the best people in the industry telling you why they thought it was good or how it could be better. So honestly, it's like $2,000 and it's worth its weight in gold. So get that. And good luck, I think. I just want to show you before I don't know how much time we've got left. We've got 10 minutes for questions. I just want to show you what's here. I have unpacked the City Lodge case for you. So you'll get this as a link. I've shown you how they brought that to light. And then I've also broken it down into each of the sections. So I haven't given you exactly what they've written, but I've summarized why each section was so good. And then we've also got in the same presentation, we've unpacked the previous year's winner, which was Pineapple and Halo. And we've also unpacked the Checkers one from the year before, or from 2021. So there's a lot of information in this deck that can help you and give you examples. There's lots of links, and the website will also help you with the actual templates and with the actual rules, and it's all there. But otherwise, just let us know what you need. So I'm going to finish there and just see if there are any questions. Sorry, there's a lot in here. Hi, Sam, have you got a question, or are you just saying hello? Can we get this presentation? Yes. We'll send it to you as a link because it's about 3,000 megs big, I think. So send it as a link. Everything's in here. And as I say, the team is on standby, and sometimes as you're writing, you suddenly have a random question about, how do I do this? Should I do that? What's the best way to do that? Just get hold of us. And as I say, there are these links to sample cases, and our magazine is really useful because you can actually see, well, firstly, examples of great work, but also secondly, just how people have put their reels together. And yeah, come and join us for the dialogue if you're in Joburg, and otherwise, happy days, and we hope to see all of your entries and see you at some of our events. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.